Last year I compared the Rode PodMic to the Shure SM7B. The PodMic is a newer release and costs about $100, while the SM7B has a legendary, decades-long reputation and usually sells for about $400. And oh boy, that video brought out some opinions. And I have found something for the PodMic that makes a world of difference, so if you're still not sure which road to go down, maybe this will help. And for this test, I have both microphones running directly into the Rodecaster Pro with no effects and no special processing turned on at all. They're both just set to the generic dynamic microphone setting. The only thing I've adjusted are the gain levels. On the PodMic, I have the gain set to plus 35, which is where I normally have it when I use this mic all the time. And on the SM7B, I have the gain set to plus 40 because it does need just a bit more gain to be at an even level. Now, I do recognize both of these microphones, and especially the Shure, are probably going to deliver the best quality if you do use something like a Cloudlifter or some kind of gain booster amplifier before sending the signal into your mixer. But personally, I don't care because I don't use any of those things. I don't want another thing in the chain. I just want my microphone to go directly into my mixer, and I want good results from that. I've been loving the results from the PodMic that I've been getting over the past year and a half that I've been using them. I actually have two of them. And even though this works pretty well for me 95% of the time, not using any kind of amplifier or anything like that, if there is ever a time where I really want to get rid of some of that background hiss, I've gotten really great results by just using Adobe Audition to analyze the noise floor by basically just double clicking on an audio clip and selecting an area with no talking, which will allow me to create a noise sample that I can then use to denoise the clip. And while that does work exceptionally well, I found that for me, I really don't need to use it most of the time because I am happy with the results I get just from the PodMic directly into the Rodecaster. So I just wanted you to be aware of that before we jump into the test. But we can switch over to the microphones now. So I'm gonna pop on my headphones. And now this is the Rode PodMic without any kind of windscreen, without any processing. This is basically the most dry signal you'll ever get out of a PodMic. Just for reference though, if I do switch it to the PodMic setting, so this is the generic dynamic setting, and this is the PodMic setting. So this is the PodMic setting, and this is the generic dynamic setting. It's up to you if you feel like you can hear a difference or not. I don't hear a tremendous difference. One of the biggest sound qualities I've noticed with the PodMic is it tends to have a lot more high end and not quite as much bass. And a lot of this, of course, depends on your personal preference and also your voice. As I said, personal preference, you might have noticed a few of those plosives, and this is really where this whole video, this is the point of this whole video. The point of this whole video is the PodMic is supposed to have a built-in pop filter, and it kind of does, but it doesn't work that great. So what you'll find yourself doing is needing to improve your mic technique because these microphones do sound better if you're closer to them. But if you're too close to the PodMic and you're speaking directly into it, then you're going to get a lot more of those plosive sounds. Whereas if you speak kind of across the front of the microphone, then your breath is not hitting the microphone directly and you kind of avoid that. I don't think it sounds quite as good, and it's not really a hassle, but when you're trying to record and trying to do a bunch of things, then remembering the angle that you're speaking into the microphone, it can kind of be a little bit frustrating. Let's switch over to the Shure microphone now. So this is the Shure SM7B, again with no processing at all, and you probably notice right off the bat a few things. One, it's not nearly as harsh with the plosives. So, you know, Peter Pepper pitched a podcast, Peter Pepper pitched a podcast. I think this sounds better in terms of the plosives. I think the other biggest difference is the low end on this right out of the box is significantly more noticeable. It just sort of sounds fuller and richer and smoother than the PodMic does, where the PodMic really kind of leans towards the high end a lot more. Both microphones sound great, and if you're not comparing them side by side, I think you'd be happy with the sound from either of them. But it is important to understand that difference, especially with the SM7B that has a pretty large following that it has accumulated over many, many decades of being in use in the industry, as they say. So to solve my PodMic plosive problem, I found for about $20, Rode sells the WS2 windscreen. And honestly, I don't know if this is specifically for the PodMic or not, but it does fit the PodMic very, very well. So this is the PodMic without the windscreen. Peter Pepper pitched a podcast. And this is the pod mic with the windscreen. Peter Pepper pitched a podcast. So what you can notice now is I can actually speak directly into the front of the microphone and it still sounds fine. I can get really, really close to this with the windscreen on. The only downside to the windscreen that I have found so far is that I don't like the way the microphone looks as much with it, which sounds dumb, I know, but I really like the design of the pod mic. I think it's a great looking mic, and if you ever use it for live streaming or anything that involves a visual component, let's face it, the visual, the looks kind of do matter a little bit. But of course, we are talking about a microphone here, so it is all about the sound that's most important. Another thing you might have noticed is when I put this on the microphone, it kind of edged off those high ends just a little bit. So without changing anything else, all I did was put this $20 windscreen onto the Rode pod mic. This is how the pod mic sounds with the windscreen, pod mic with the windscreen. And this is how the SM7B sounds with its windscreen right out of the box. And I think there's definitely a difference, especially in terms of the bass response, at least listening over my headphones, but that doesn't necessarily mean better. It just comes down to your personal preference and what works well with your voice. What I can say is I really prefer the sound of the pod mic with the windscreen on. And I actually do, for my voice, prefer the pod mic over the SM7B. One, because maybe I am a little more used to it, but also because I feel like this setup right here gives me the most balanced sound. There's not too much lows, there's not too much highs. It feels like the most natural sound, and I really enjoy that. I like the way that sounds with my voice. I also really like the way that the SM7B sounds because it's very smooth and rich and warm. There's a reason that it's a legendary microphone, but it also does have a lot of bass, and sometimes I feel like maybe a little bit too much. And again, you could equalize all this out, especially if you're using a more traditional mixer that gives you those fine controls, or you throw this audio recording into some editing software to make those adjustments. But this is just what it sounds like, straight out of the box. So my whole point in doing this comparison is this is a $400 microphone. This is a $100 microphone with a $20 windscreen. So for $120, you can get this sound. And for $400, you can get this sound. Now, let's take it a step further. What if I actually did want to EQ these? What if, for example, you have spent $400 on the Shure SM7B, and that's your main microphone? You host a podcast, you do streaming, whatever. This is your main microphone. But now you want a second one because maybe you have a guest or something sometimes, but not all the time. Do you want to spend another $400, or for $120, you get the pod mic with the windscreen? But now you want to match these microphones together a little bit. So let's see if we can do that. Right now, I'm going to go into the pod mic setting. If I switch it to the pod mic default, this is what it sounds like now. And then I think, just going to do this live in the video with what the Rodecaster has, which is very basic equalization. I'm going to go into processing. So I'm going to add some of the big bottom processing, which basically is bass boost. Basically, it's a bass boost in the Rodecaster Pro. So this is with the bass boost, and then this is without the bass boost. Now, I don't know that I would actually normally want this much bass in my recording, but I think that does bring it much more in line with the Shure SM7B. And I guess you could take down some of the low end in this to match the pod mic. So I don't think you would really have a problem finding a way to EQ these mics in a way that's going to work together, where you have two people in a conversation back and forth, and it doesn't sound distracting. Let's see if I can play around with it just a little bit more. So I spent maybe 30 seconds trying to match them up a little bit. And the only thing I have turned on the pod mic is the big bottom. I have it tuned to 117 hertz with the drive at 76 and the mix at 43. I think no matter what mixer you're using, it's not impossible to make these microphones match pretty nicely, actually, overall. So here's the thing. I don't own a Shure SM7B because it is very expensive. And while it could be worth it, I'm super happy with the pod mic personally. However, I've purchased something like 12 of them over the years for work. So I've used the microphone pretty extensively, just not at home for my own stuff. And it is a great microphone. What you might not know, since typically when you see an SM7B, it looks like this, which is a very sleek design, is it actually comes with a big fluffy windscreen. So your $400 gets you the microphone, this little windscreen, and this big puffy one, which looks really similar to the one that I bought for the Rode mic. Let's just see how that compares. So just take off the windscreen, it just pulls off,
and then you just slide the really puffy windscreen on, which actually is the one that I like to use the most because, again, just like this, it requires like zero mic technique. Anybody can just talk at the microphone and it's going to sound pretty great. So with all that being said, this is the Rode Pod Mic with the big fat windscreen on it on the dynamic setting with a little bit of the bass boost. And this is the Shure SM7B on the generic dynamic setting with no additional processing and the big fluffy poofy windscreen. So the Shure SM7B and the Rode Pod Mic side by side. And ever since I've been using it with this windscreen, I feel like I like it even more because this windscreen itself just automatically EQs the mic in a way that I like with my specific dorky voice. And I hope it goes without saying that this video is not sponsored. I love both of these microphones, and the Shure, right now the Shure is sounding really good to my voice, but obviously I'm a pretty big fan of Rode stuff, even though like I purchased all this. I didn't get sent to me for free, but Rode did send me something for free.
That's right, it is an official Rode baseball hat. And actually they didn't send this to me as like a bribe or anything. Every year Rode hosts the My Rodecast podcast competition. And this year, as like the consolation prize for people like me who didn't win, they sent this hat out, which is kind of cool. I love that it comes in a box that makes it look like a regular Rode product. Like, oh yes, I need the Rodecaster Pro and the Pod Mic and of course the baseball hat. All of the things that you need to look super cool. This is actually a very nice hat though. The thing is though, I'm more used to wearing like, I guess what we would call like a dad hat traditionally. This is like a cool guy hat, like a flat brim. It does have the logo embroidered on it, but I'm just like, I don't know, hats, I'm not much of normally a hat guy other than just like the dorky dad hat. I feel like my wife right now. If you ever watch my wife's channel, she can wear a hat cool, like she wears the sideways backwards hat. Actually, I feel like, all right, so if I put this purple hair on, now you can't tell the difference between me and my wife. And speaking of my wife, Heather, it was her idea to do the blindfolded microphone comparison video where we took 4 microphones. I was blindfolded and I tried to guess which one was which. So check out that video right there. Subscribe to my channel, Heather Just Create on YouTube, and I'll see you in the next video.